Today on our Tech for Business podcast, we are joined by Ben, the Director of Information Security at Armor Point. Thank you for taking time to be here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. I should have mentioned this is going out during Cybersecurity Awareness Month, which when we're recording this is still a couple weeks away. But we're talking ransomware as a service, like the business model of it. So Ben, can you tell me a little bit of what does that mean, ransomware as a service, and how it's kind of changing cybersecurity?
Yeah, definitely. So ransomware as a service, like you said, it's a business model where ransomware developers create and sell or lease their malicious software to other criminals. They call those RaaS affiliates. So ransomware as a service, or RaaS. So we have the RaaS operators or developers, and then we have the RaaS affiliate. So the RaaS operators and developers, they are the ones with the high technical coding expertise who create the ransomware, but not just the ransomware itself, but also the infrastructure to deploy it, to manage it. This means monitoring who your victims are. This means they provide a payment system where victims are able to, make their ransom payments. And then the RaaS affiliates are often individuals with less coding skills. They don't have the high technical expertise to create ransomware themselves, but they usually have other technical expertise, things like social engineering. They're phishing experts. They may be your traditional hacker who's able to infiltrate networks through your other technical means. And so they work together where the RaaS developers create the ransomware and the RaaS affiliate deploy the ransomware. Traditionally, an attack like ransomware would all be conducted by a single person or maybe a couple people, and they would be responsible for the entire attack chain. But now, because ransomware as a service is becoming such a growing threat, people with less technical expertise who are interested, for whatever their reasons may be, in entering the world of cybercrime, that barrier to entry for technical expertise is a lot lower now because of this ransomware as a service growing. So the RaaS developers focus on creating powerful tools while the affiliates handle the attacks themselves. And this increases just the scale and the frequency of ransomware campaigns, honestly, worldwide.
Yeah. I mean, that was going to be my next question, was who was doing this? But as you're talking, it sounds like the speed at which this could be deployed is just growing because of this service model, which is
Yeah.
crazy to think
Yeah,
about.
definitely. The speed is one of the big issues too, is how fast an attack can be deployed means that us on the defensive side, we have much less time to defend.
Yeah. So I would love to dive a little bit more into some unique issues that this service is creating, but I want to touch on who we're talking to today, because when I think of ransomware, I think of like large corporations or people who have a lot of data and also have a lot of money being the targets. So is this a concern for small businesses, or is it a concern for specific industries? Who are we talking to today?
Oh yeah, this is definitely a concern for small businesses. In a lot of ways, small businesses are the primary target. Like you said, large corporations may have the resources to pay a large ransom, but that also means that they have more resources to invest in stronger cybersecurity defenses. So small businesses often lack a dedicated IT security team. They usually have less budget for advanced protection, so this makes them a much more vulnerable and attractive target. Some data reports even show that small businesses make up a larger percentage of ransomware attacks than large businesses do. And
Interesting.
so, and it becomes much more threatening because attackers and cybercriminals will happily adjust their ransom demands to increase the odds of payment. So they'll happily ask for less money if it means that you're more likely to pay. So it's much easier to ask 10 small businesses, or demand, I should say. It's much easier to demand that small businesses pay $100,000 than one large corporation pays $1 million.
Interesting. I'd love to talk a little bit about some practical steps. We don't need to go into like too much of like incident response, because that's a whole other
Oh yeah.
conversation. But before we do that, can we go back to the unique issues that ransomware as a service is really causing? We talked a little bit about speed. Is there anything else that comes to mind that's unique to this service that's affecting the cybersecurity world?
Yeah, I mean, really, it's that speed and the widespread nature of it. It's the fact
Mhm.
that it's so much easier for people to execute these attacks than ever before. Previously, you might have seen malware tools out there, like a malware developer might create something and they might share it with some of their close friends or their close affiliates. The same way that, I might find a new tool or a fun new app in the App Store and I would send it over to you because I'm like, hey, this is a fun app. But now because of more professionalized nature of it or the more organized nature of it, it becomes more of a business model, honestly. So it becomes we have more of a tiered structure of the developers at the top, and then we have the affiliates. They kind of act like, let's say, salespeople. They're responsible for that last mile of the sale or the attack, really. And then even beyond that, there is a role that's a little bit less spoken of. We call them initial access brokers. So we have the RaaS developers who develop the ransomware, the RaaS affiliates who are responsible for deploying the ransomware, and then the initial access brokers are those who focus more on gaining access to networks. So they might be internal threats. They might be people, I don't know, disgruntled employees or ex-employees of companies who leave their company with credentials that they've stolen, or they're technical hackers who focus more on breaking into a network and they sell that access to the network to the RaaS affiliate so that they have access to deploy the ransomware further.
Oh, I keep thinking about this business model. I mean, is it kind of the same as there are the big hitters and there are the small ransomware service businesses and they're getting acquired and they're having holiday parties? I mean, how deep does this true like business model go?
Yeah, this definitely happens. We've seen a new ransomware as a service provider. It, it's funny to use that word, but they
Yeah.
really are a service provider. Ransom Hub is a new one that has launched, and we've actually seen them. Security researchers have actually seen them poaching other cyber criminals from other ransomware groups. And so the way that the ransomware as a service typically works is the RaaS developer creates the ransomware and then the affiliates deploy it and they share the profits. So usually the profits have been it's usually about 50-50. Sometimes the developer will take 70%, the affiliate will take 30%, but it's that kind of range. But with Ransom Hub, we saw them essentially campaign and try and poach cyber criminals by offering 90%. You get to keep 90% of the ransomware payment and we'll take 10%. So they really are employing legitimate business tactics to build their organization.
Wow, that's crazy. I mean, to have a business model, you must end up having a lot of companies that end up paying out. I mean, can we talk a little bit about if you're a business and you are a victim of ransomware, sort of what some of those first steps you should do? I know everyone's big question is, should I pay? Should I not pay? What does that look like from a business point of view?
From a business point of view, whether or not you should pay the ransom, generally speaking, law enforcement agencies like the FBI, they don't support paying a ransom. I personally also don't support paying the ransom because it encourages further criminal activity, and also it offers no guarantee that your data will be returned. It, in You know what? Actually, that traditionally speaking, paying the ransom doesn't always guarantee that your data will be returned, but this is something that the ransomware as a service model has changed because they want to operate more as a legitimate business. It actually is more likely that they're going to return your data because they don't want to be known as a group who, well, we're going to pay you, but we're not going to release your data. In a sense, they want to build a reputation that they're trustworthy, that, hey, you
Yeah.
pay us, we'll give you your data back. But even still with that, government agencies, law enforcement agencies definitely don't support paying the ransom because of the fact that it encourages further business. It further supplies the service operators to continue their operations. But one of the things that often or the main influences to whether or not a business pays that ransom It's usually how critical the data is and how available their backups are. Those are going to be the
Right.
biggest influencers on it. So if the business has no recent reliable backups and the data that is encrypted is essential for their operations, a lot of the times the cost of paying the ransom is going to be seen as less than the cost of the lost business. So
Sure.
it's definitely a slippery slope. There's no real one advisement, but the best advisement is going to be able to respond and recover from the ransomware attack without ever having to pay the ransom in the first place.
Right. Right. How quickly do people bounce back from a ransomware? Like how quickly do businesses get back up and running? I mean, it depends, but
Yeah, it definitely depends. It definitely varies, but how quickly a business can bounce back mostly relies on how good their backups and how available their backups are. If you have regular backups that you trust and you've tested them and you're able to quickly bounce back and restore data that's been lost, that's how quickly you can bounce back from an attack. So if it takes weeks to restore that data, it's going to take weeks to bounce back. But if in some instances, if you have backups that can flash back in an instant, then it's almost like it never happened.
oh, yeah. So we've been focusing a lot on the financial part of it because that's a huge part of this conversation. But attacks like this also are affecting reputation, compliance,
Yeah.
and security in general. So beyond that financial, what are some concerns about ransomware for businesses?
A lot of concern, like you said, it's a reputational damage. So customer trust is going to be harmed. And we are also seeing a lot of focus on the supply chain right now. So if you're a service provider who contracts your services out to several large organizations, and that service provider gets knocked out by ransomware, that means all those large organizations also lost access to that service. We saw that a lot
Yeah.
with the Change Healthcare breach, where Change Healthcare, the division of United Healthcare, they got taken down. So their payment processing and access to critical data got shut down, which meant that smaller providers, small medical providers all around the country also lost access to that. I actually have a personal connection to this particular data. A close friend of mine, she is a marriage and family therapist, and she runs a small therapy practice in Southern California, and healthcare or Change Healthcare was a large portion of her patients their insurance. So because they were taken down, she was unable to process her patients' payments, which also meant that her employees' payroll was affected, and it just created this whole cascading effect.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah,
And then reputation, I mean, it can be really difficult to come back from that. Even when you have all of your backups, you have all of your things, everything is back into place. I mean,
yeah,
once people kind of
definitely.
have that feeling, it's
Yeah,
hard to
definitely.
come back.
I even feel guilty just calling out Change Healthcare and United because
Right.
it's not necessarily like I feel guilty calling them out because I'm just perpetuating that reputational damage. But at the same time, we also do have to speak about these real world examples. They're important for us to learn from. So I call them out not to say, hey, you did a bad thing, but this is an
Yeah.
example that we can all learn from, really.
Definitely. It's come up on our podcast before, and we've definitely talked about other events that we've seen and kind of talked about the importance of communication and having not only an incident response plan, but a communication response plan and being able to have that open communication. I mean, maybe you can touch a little bit on how important that open communication is in an event like this.
Yeah, the open communication is huge because the response needs to be very fast. The attacks are happening much faster, so that means our response needs to be much faster. So having those open lines of communication between incident responders, between staff who may have been affected by a ransomware attack, that open communication is huge. Say you're a lone employee, you're working remote, but your workstation is connected to your all of your work resources and notice something strange on your computer. If you don't know who to talk to or who to tell about that, then that strange activity is just going to continue happening. But if you know exactly who to report, hey, this is happening on my computer, can we take a look at it? Or what do I do? If that open line of communication is there, then response can be much faster. And on that line of or on that note of communication, it's also important to have backup communication methods because sometimes the ransomware attack might take out your initial communication method, or maybe Teams is having a service issue or something like that. If you don't have backup communication method, then that could also hinder your response time as well.
That is so smart to consider. I hadn't even really thought about that, but you're totally right.
It's true, and like even our team, we have our traditional Teams channel, and then we have our email platform, and then we also like to keep a backup Discord chat open for our incident response, just to be sure that should anything happen, if there's ever a Teams outage or anything like that, we have backup just in case. You know.
Super smart. So, coming back to this ransomware as a service, and you spoke a little bit about open communication. How, what are other ways in which cybersecurity professionals like yourself are adapting to this new model that's out there?
Oh yeah. So it's definitely changing the landscape, mostly because of how quickly attacks are being deployed. I mean, from the defender side, the attack is going to look pretty similar to previous. It's going to be initial access, be that a phishing email or someone stole credentials and they were able to access the network, and then they deployed malware. So part of the problem is how quickly they're able to respond to that and how quickly the attacks happen. But one of the ways that defenders are adapting to it, rather than only focusing on simply blocking the attacks and responding to things, they're starting to be a little bit more proactive with things. So we're increasingly using what's called zero trust architecture, or sometimes CTNA, zero trust networking architecture. And that means that it operates off of the principle of never trust, always verify. So traditional network architecture would say that if you're connected to the corporate network, if your device is connected to to a corporate Ethernet, if you're on premises, that means we trust you. You have access to everything that's on the network. Now with zero trust, it means that regardless of what network you're connecting from, regardless of what your device ID is, you're always going to have to verify who you are and that you are who you say you are, and that you have legitimate access to whatever you're trying to access, be that a critical application for business use, be it administrative functions, if it's HR files, things like that. And then in that same vein, we're also more increasingly using micro segmentation within a network. So micro segmentation is making sure that each department really has a specific segment of the network. So HR will have a different section of the network than finance, and they'll have a different section of the network than R&D, and so on and so forth. So that means that you only have access to what you need access to. And we call that the principle of least privilege. So you're only going to have access to what you actually need to access.
Yeah. I'm going to move a little bit forward in an or like higher level in this conversation. We talk a lot or are excited about AI. So I'd love to talk a little bit about what the changes in AI and all these new amazing tools, how they're sort of helping with that attack and defend from your point of view.
Yeah, so attackers are definitely using AI. Well, we're definitely using AI on both sides of the battle. Attackers are using it more to create more believable phishing emails. So that old adage of, if there's typos, then it's definitely a scam. That doesn't really apply anymore because a generative AI is much more able to create more believable phishing emails, not just with grammatical errors, but also AI is used to scan social media to see what someone's communication habits are, and it's more able to recreate or copy someone's communication style, and specifically what types of words they use, what types of punctuation they use, things like that. And then AI is also being used to automate parts of the attack chain, so it's able to deploy and send out phishing emails at a much greater speed. And then on the defense side, we're also leveraging AI to do more real-time threat detection. So AI is much quicker at analyzing huge amounts of data than, any human analyst or any group of human analysts would be able to do. And then we're also able to automate responses. So things like quarantining an infected endpoint before the ransomware can spread, things like that are how we're utilizing AI. But it's definitely changing, and it's changing fast. I just saw something this morning one of the new AI models is much better at creating the deepfake technology. It's AI actor to it's it's an AI actor where
Yeah.
me on a webcam, it's going to change my face, it's going to change my body, and up until recently, our recommendation for defending against deepfake interviews like that would be, have the interviewee stand up, have them wave their hand in front of the camera, because previously AIs would be able, you'd be able to spot a little bit of blurriness in the eyes, the hand might move weird, but this new developments in AI are making that much more believable. It kind of
Yeah.
tripped me out this morning seeing this AI actor, and it was really good. It
Yeah.
it's getting better. So it's moving fast. So it is a little bit unsettling, if I'm being honest. But it's also true that as AI continues to develop on the attacker side, we're continuing to develop AI on the defense side. Using AI tools to conduct live scanning of an interview to say, hey, this is percent likely to be an AI generated video, things like that. So it's developing fast, but on both sides.
Yes. I've heard some IT professionals that I work with who, to combat some of that stuff, they almost go backward in technology. For example, they will just have like a code word that they
Yes.
will use, and they'll be just say the code word, because
Yep.
even some of that simplified ideas or technology kind of works. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know if you have anything like that you do or that you could think of.
No, definitely. That subject actually came up within our team recently, and it feels so like 1950s spy movie. Like, what's the secret
Yeah.
password? What's the go? But it really is kind of the way that it's one of the best ways that we can defend against it right now is say your team has a daily or weekly code word, and you have to start a meeting with this code word, or you um start an interview with that specific passphrase, or things like that. Or so it definitely feels that way. It definitely feels like we're going back a little bit, but it's kind of nice in a way, in that, like, one of the recommendations that I have now is, if you don't trust whether or not a message coming to you is legitimate, one of the best ways to verify that is to see the person in person. So it's kind
Yeah.
of bringing us back to an in-person and a more human connection
Yeah.
than we had before. So there is a bright side, there is a silver light.
Yeah.
However bleak that may feel, I don't know. I don't know, campy or silly it may feel to have that passphrase, it really is effective.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Yeah.
for sure is. That's so funny. So, to close out, I'd love to talk a little bit because we like to give advice on this podcast to make sure that businesses have some action steps. Are there any kind of practical, everyday steps that businesses can easily do right now to risk being targeted or to just kind of improve that defense of their security?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that there's anything that businesses could do to reduce the target. It's kind of a theory, not a theory. It's kind of a philosophy within cybersecurity that it's not a matter of if you get attacked, it's more a matter of when.
Yeah.
So the best strategy that you can have is great defense. So making sure that you focus on resilience. So that means, firstly, implementing a robust and regularly tested backup strategy and recovery plan. That's going to be huge. So making sure that your critical files or your entire network is backed up, and able to be restored as quickly as possible, and that you regularly test it to make sure that it's effective. That's huge. And then there's also the 3-2-1 rule. So the 3-2-1 rule advises you to maintain 3 copies of your data and store those copies on 2 different types of media, and keep at least one of those copies on an offsite location. So that just helps to ensure that your backups maintain secure, because that's going to be one of the first things that ransomware attackers will target, is your backup strategy. So to make sure
Yeah.
that you're not able to restore from that. Second, enforce multi-factor authentication on all critical accounts, really all accounts possible. Personal, professional, multi-factor authentication is going to be huge. There are still some ways around it, but it's still one of the best ways to make sure that your critical account stays secure. And then the biggest thing for me, I'm always going to be an advocate for this, is conduct regular employee cybersecurity training. Cybersecurity awareness is huge. Human error, and through things like phishing attacks, even something as simple as misplacing your work device, the human vector is the primary attack vector. That's why social engineering is such a huge thing. So conducting regular cybersecurity awareness training to make sure that everybody knows what to look out for, that's going to be huge. And I feel like that there's a lot of development and there's a lot of progress that can be made in the security awareness realm. Traditionally, you might see once a year cybersecurity awareness training, or even get one cybersecurity awareness training at your onboarding, and that's it. And it covers the basics of, like, this is what a phishing email looks like. This is how to set a strong password. These are safe browsing techniques. But I think that security awareness training needs to evolve to where we're sharing with all employees at all levels. These are the threats that are on the landscape. This is how it affects the business. This is how it affects you in your personal life. And these are ways that you can protect yourself. And that's one of the things is it's with the advancement of remote work and with cloud infrastructure and just how vast the attack landscape is. It means that a cybersecurity attack does not only affect a business, it can also affect your personal life as well. So like my friend who ran her business and was unable to process payment for her employees, that affected a whole bunch of people. And it was, and it was strictly a business attack. And it didn't even have happen to her practice, So that's huge. Definitely security awareness.
I like you kind of wrapped it back around to that communication too, and that training and that human element is huge.
Yes.
Um, as we close out here, I want to give you an opportunity to share anything else that you didn't get to. And then I'd love to close out with sort of what 2026 or what 5 years from now, maybe what 10 years from now, this ransomware as a service is going to start looking like.
Yeah, definitely. I think that ransomware as a service on the defender side, it's going to look the same. It's going to look like attacks. They might be more organized, some on the defender side, like the ransomware, it's gone beyond just a simple ransom note on your device that says, haha, we've locked all your files, send this many Bitcoin to this wallet or else, and it gotten much more advanced where now they have dark web websites where they'll point you to, and you'll be able to chat live with a representative from the ransomware as a service operator to even negotiate, to ask for more time. There's a whole customer service or victim service, I guess. There's a whole service operations line there. And then one of the bigger trends that I feel like businesses should look out for, there's an increase in what we call double extortion attacks. So criminals are not only encrypting data and demanding ransom, they're also stealing that data so that if the ransom is not paid, now they're threatening to release the data publicly to, cause more reputational harm or just sell the data in the first place, which will lead to further ransomware attacks or further just cyber attacks to begin with. And, double extortion, it's made tougher because of how quickly technology is advancing, and particularly internet speed. Because the internet is so fast, because we have 5G, and the speed of the internet is evolving quickly. That means that they're able to steal larger amounts of data much faster, and devices are able to encrypt data much faster than before. Where before it might have, I think we remember it an hour, or it used to have to leave a download overnight so that to download one music video, I might be aging myself, but but yeah, it's so much faster now. You can download a huge block of data in a blink of an eye with today's internet speed. So this makes double extortion that much more threatening, where they don't even need to sift through the company data to find the key important stuff. They can just say, hey, I'm going to take this whole block and I'm going to do it later, So that's definitely a big threat to deal with. So that's where initially defending yourself to begin with, you know, keeping that human attack vector, making sure your employees are trained to spot these things so that to stop the ransomware attack in the first place. That's going to be huge.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else that we didn't cover that you would like to share?
I'd say Looking forward, the best piece of advice I could give is to treat cybersecurity as a core business function. And a strategic investment. It's not an IT expense. It's not something that you have that should budget and try and find the cheapest provider. I mean, of course, you're going to want to find the most or works best for your revenue
Reasonable.
for
Yeah.
those numbers. But the key is treating it as a core business function and not just an arm of the IT department. So making sure that treat it as something important to the business, as something that's core to the business. That's investing in ongoing employee training, conducting regular tabletop exercises, test to respond, and then, like we said, ensuring that your data backups are strong and that they are functioning as they should be. That's going to be huge for your defense. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, just building that culture of cybersecurity. That's huge. By investing in cybersecurity awareness training for all your employees, by ensuring that that open communication path is there for people to report something that's a little fishy or something that's a little off on their device or what have you. That's going to build a stronger culture of cybersecurity where people are watching out now, and that just makes it that much harder for an attack to take place.
This is a great way to start Cybersecurity Awareness Month, but it's not just a month, it's all year, and it should be
Yeah,
integrated into all pieces of your business. So we love it. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
of course. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoy it.
Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed this topic, please let us know. Like, subscribe, or reach out to us at info@cit-net.com or head out to our website, cit-net.com/podcast. We'll be back next week with an all-new episode.